Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I like that response. The famous parable today of the Good Samaritan, we've all heard it. And the cure and helping of that person, as it is the case in all of these spiritual healings, which this is in a way, is related to not just physical, but spiritual healing. Today's gospel was written by Luke, a physician. Interesting. A physician. And it's not by accident that yesterday I returned from a conference in Washington, D.C. on spirituality and health, sponsored by the George Washington University Institute for Spirituality and Health. And what was clearly visible there were the attendees, who were mainly MDs, nurses, chaplains, and how much they also needed caring for, how much they needed healing. These professionals were suffering both physical and spiritual needs. They are called upon to minister to their patients and are dealing with death on a daily basis. They are the ones that are asked to tell the loved ones that their loved one has died or why they're not going to live. And they don't have many people to minister to them. Perhaps it would be easiest to describe what is going on here by case study. A woman who died a couple months ago was a joyful person, and she suffered from many illnesses, but ultimately succumbed to ovarian cancer. And she was discharged from the hospital after surgery, and 2 days later passed away. The surgeon was one of the top gynecological oncologists in the country here in Houston. We talked about this case while we were in Washington, D.C. This gynecological oncologist did his best. It was a severely difficult surgery, a lot of complications, 5 pints of blood lost, and absolutely did his best. And when she passed away, within an hour of her passing, he showed up at the emergency room of another hospital just to see her. This is dedication. This man I'm friends with, and I wanted to get together with him for lunch. It happened to be a couple of weeks after this woman passed. And he said to me, I can't go because we'll have to schedule later because I'm going to Lourdes with my daughter and my wife. Which begged the question, well, what's going on? And he said that his daughter suffered from a massive infection and was hospitalized, and they cured the infection. But her stomach failed and she was having to be fed through a tube. She was and is 13 years old, with the prospect of being fed through a tube for the rest of her life. He's a top medical doctor. He checked out every possible solution. There were none. They were all exhausted. And I prayed with him over the phone that we not have any expectations. God knows what he's looking for. And that whatever happens, that we be given the grace to accept God's will. We got in touch by phone a couple days after he got back, and he said, I absolutely have to talk to you very soon. He said the day we got back, she started to eat again. This man is a very holy man. He's a good Catholic in the community here in Houston. He knows what it's like to suffer. Do you think he talked about that with his patients? That's crossing the boundary. He can't do it. Who's ministering to him? The question of this case is, who was the Good Samaritan? Was it the woman who had passed away and knew about this girl and was helping her after she passed away? After all, we talk about saints in this church of ours, and one of the requirements of sainthood is that you've got to show that you helped intercede on a healing after you're gone. Who was the Good Samaritan? The husband of the woman received a note from Father Thomas Keating saying that you administered and helped her and took care of her. Now she's taking care of you from heaven. This is at the core of our belief that we do not go out of existence after we die, and that we actually do help each other back and forth. A couple of weeks after this miracle, and by the way, this miracle happened just a few weeks ago. Okay, this is not ancient history. A couple weeks after that miracle, I was in Chicago at another conference on medicine and healing sponsored by the University of Chicago. These conferences are popping up everywhere. Medicine now is recognizing that spirituality and healing go together, that we are holistic, that we are non-dualistic. This is the Catholic teaching, that our bodies and our souls are interstitial. And medicine realizes it. And at that conference, one of the breakout sessions was by an MD who takes people to Lourdes and performs surgery at the site. So afterwards, I go up to him and I say, "Do you know Dr. So-and-so?" And he says, and I told him the miracle that happened. And pardon me, I didn't, he asked me to repeat the name. And I repeated it, and he still wasn't sure. I sent him a picture. He says, "I was there with him. I just got back. He was in another group. We were there together." How does the Spirit talk to us? Little signals. Little signals. He didn't know the miracle took place. I reintroduced to him this man by email. What is going to happen? Is that man now going to be the doctor that accompanies other patients to Lourdes? Is this going to be a cascading of miracles? That's how the Spirit works. Strangely enough, in the interim, I go to the Oblate School of Theology in San Antonio. First time I've been there, they have a full-scale replica of Lourdes. See, God with me, God's got to be a little rough. I'm German, and I'm an engineer. This is a bad combination. I mean, firstly, you're kind of bullheaded. Everything's got to be your way. And secondly, an engineer, you've got to be able to fix things, and you got logic. Okay. So this Lourdes is coming up over and over again. Science is searching for the Holy Grail of consciousness. They think it's in the brain, but they can't find it. I don't think they will. Consciousness in the brain doesn't explain contemplative experiences of saints, though science now appreciates that they're real, and they're very similar to near-death experiences. Best-selling book out by Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon, Proof of Heaven. His whole view had to change because once he evaluated his case and what he experienced was so profound that he went back and when he recovered, it was a very rare case, he recovered, his brain was completely shut down because of an E. coli infection. There is no way he could have had consciousness of anything, and yet he experienced people who had gone before him, the woman and the daughter, experienced other universes. His worldview changed, Before then, as a neurosurgeon, he thought the brain was the center of consciousness. Now he believes that consciousness is outside the brain, and that the brain is actually a filter to protect us from everything, because we couldn't possibly understand everything. It would overwhelm us. Now that doesn't contradict Catholic teaching, but it does seem plausible because we know so little. 95% of the universe is dark energy, dark matter. You can't see it. 95% of our brain is unconscious. So why shouldn't his interpretation be correct? It might be, we don't know. We cannot know everything. Scientists finally have discovered that we can't know everything. In fact, as part of nature, it is such that it cannot be known. It's a law of nature called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. But Augustine was really the first to talk about this unknown in a way. He said, I cannot know everything about myself. And we constantly think of these miracles as exceptions to the laws of nature. That is not what Augustine thought. Augustine talked about, we don't understand miracles because we don't understand all the laws of nature. The miracle is not the exception. The miracle is creation itself. The miracle is this extended consciousness that enables us to pray with people who passed before. Altered states of consciousness, as the scientists refer to it. Today's reading, the Samaritan says to the innkeeper, take care of him. Is the Samaritan talking to us? Is the Samaritan talking to us? After the parable, Jesus says to the lawyer that was grilling him, go and do the same. Love one another. Love is the answer to why we're here. It takes most people a lifetime to figure out that simple four-letter word, love. We're asked to extend love to those who are suffering. But only 5% of what we see is conscious. We extend love to those who don't seem to be suffering, because probably 95% of them are suffering, and we don't even know it. So the question is, when we have treatment by a doctor or a nurse or a chaplain who visits us, do we go back and thank them, even though a loved one may have passed away under their care? Do we be present for those who are suffering without judgment, without fixing? Our journey is to an end, but ultimately, the end is the journey itself. The journey itself is the end. Love. By the way, the woman was my wife.